Hey guys, I'm Amanda Miller, and I am a voice actor and a nerd and a human being, among other things, although sitting in this chair talking to this camera by myself makes me feel like I'm like a kidnapper. Like I've kidnapped Martin, and that's why he's actually not doing the talk this week. It's because I've tied him up and he's over there and he's trying to call for help, but he can't. And this is my ransom video. But I don't know what I would want for a ransom. I'll get back to that. Anyway, so I'm supposed to talk about something that makes me happy, and I feel like it seems so stupid, but one thing that brought me a lot of joy when I was going through a period of depression like a couple years ago, and it still brings me joy, is watching Boy Meets World. I grew up watching the show, and there's something about, I don't know, like, it's hard for me to describe because I feel like very few other shows capture it for me because I don't usually like sitcoms. I usually think they're cheesy. But that show, I don't know, it had so much heart and comedy. I felt like I knew these people, and that's kind of sad, I guess, to be like, oh, they're my friends. But I was going through a really lonely time a couple years ago. I mean, I go on and off when I have episodes. So every time I go through a depressive episode, that tends to be like one of the main things is I feel completely alone, or I feel like I have no hope, or there's nothing good. And so I think Boy Meets World kind of filled that void in my life, at least temporarily, you know, because if it fills the void in my life forever, and they're my only friends, and they're fictional characters, that's a little sad. But if it helps you fill the gaps, you know, whatever. So I would be watching, I think it was ABC Family would just like marathon it, and so I was DVRing it, and every day there was a period where I would just stay at home and I would watch Boy Meets World, and I would laugh and I would cry and I would just live my day with my friends. And there's something about it that kind of gave me hope, and I can't really put my finger on it, and I guess I don't have to, because everybody relates to different shows. You know, some people will be like, Sharknado saved my life, and I'll be like, alright. But if it worked for them, it worked for them, so who am I to say it didn't? Although I feel like a Sharknado would actually do the opposite, and it would end your life if this was a real thing, which it's not, hopefully, fingers crossed. Knock on wood. I just knocked on wood. Because I think also with Boy Meets World, one thing that I always lacked was growing up, I was an Air Force brat, so we moved around a lot. Like, every couple years we would pick up and move to a completely new location, have to make completely new friends, and live in a new house, and adapt to a new environment. Like, we lived, when I was 2, we moved from Germany, we moved to Florida, and then I went to 3 different elementary schools, 2 different middle schools, 2 different high schools, and then, I went to college, and then after college I moved to California. So one thing I always kind of craved was this concept of home. And, they always say home is where the heart is, and that's true. Like, I still consider home, like when I go home, it's wherever my family is, my parents and my brother and my sister, and I love them very much. But there was still always something that I felt was, like, lacking as far as, like, when people ask me where I'm from, even today it annoys me. So don't ask me where I'm from, because that question gets on my nerves, because I have to be like, well, I'm not really from anywhere, and then that makes me feel bad. It makes me feel like some gypsy or something. Actually, that'd be kind of cool. I always liked Hunchback Notre Dame. Like Esmeralda. If I was ever, that's a dream of mine. I love doing musical theater, and if they were to bring Hunchback Notre Dame to Broadway, like I know that they've been having the previews, but if they were to bring it to New York and I was to be Esmeralda, I would die. I mean, I would do the show and then I would die. So at least people would be like, she was really good. As opposed to like, if I died before the show, they'd be like, we don't know. That might be better though, because I feel like they'd be like, she could have been great, and then they'd like immortalize me based on my potential awesomeness. I'm rambling. And there's no one here to stop me. I really do feel like a psychopath talking to the camera by myself and laughing by myself. But that's me. Yeah, Boy Meets World kind of gave me that concept of like, these are my friends, they've grown up together, they went to the same elementary school and then middle school and then high school, and then they all got accepted to the same college. And Mr. Feeney, their teacher, was their, I don't even, math, history, he seemed like he just kind of taught stuff. He was just like the life lessons teacher. I don't think he was actually like accredited in any one subject area. Maybe he was. I feel like it was history or math, but then I feel like sometimes it'd be just like rando stuff. And they would be, like, he was their teacher in elementary school, and then middle school, was he the principal? No, I think he was also a teacher in middle school. And then in high school, he was like the principal, and then in college he was the dean or something. Like, it's so implausible and actually kind of creepy if you think about it. That like somehow he's like following this group of 4 kids. Like, that actually is something you would imagine being followed up by, you know, 4 college students found in Dean's freezer. And there's posters everywhere, like a shrine to these 4 children found in Dean's house. So maybe that's the epilogue to Boy Meets World. Actually, no, it's Girl Meets World, which I actually really like. I didn't think I was gonna like it. I thought it was gonna be cheesy, and at first it was kind of, it's still a little cheesy, but like, it warms my heart to see like Eric and Sean and Corey and Topanga, and to see their happy, amazing life that like is highly improbable but still awesome. Boy Meets World made me happy because it kind of made me feel like home exists, but it also made me realize that like home doesn't have to exist like that to be real and to be healing, you know? I learned a lot from my experiences of moving around so much. You know, so as much as I hated it as a kid, I just wanted to stay in one place and have the same group of friends and be able to say, this is my childhood home. I grew up here. Like, I can't say that. The house I visit for Christmas is like a different one each year, especially because my family keeps moving. So every year it's like, I got a new house for Christmas. It also, like those challenges that I hated growing up and made me miserable, helped me learn to adapt to change and to new situations, new people, and it helped me kind of learn to hold things loosely. You know, like we cling so tightly to the things that we love and want, and it's good, you know, if you love something, you do want to hold on to it, but it kind of taught me that like, whatever happens, it'll ultimately be okay. And I always hate when people say that, because it's like, you don't know, but in reality, I have turned out okay. Like, even through all the crappy times and even through all these moving, you know, like each time I moved, I was like, this is it. I'm not gonna make friends here. That last place was the best place I've ever lived, and life will never be as good as it was back then, you know, and I said that every time I moved, and then eventually I would make friends and I would start to set down roots, and I would find something about the place that I was in that made it worth it. And so now when I look back, you know, there's times where I still am like, ugh, I hated 5th grade or I hated 8th grade or whatever because we had just moved that year. But there's something that I love and miss about each place, and there's people that I met in each place that, you know, that I still keep in touch with and that I love and that affected me in some way. I don't think I would give that up. Like, if I had to go back, as much as I think I want I thought I wanted the Boy Meets World, like, nothing ever has to change. You can grow up together. You never have to let go. In reality, I'm like, that's kind of crazy and not actually healthy. That being said, I will watch the hell out of a Boy Meets World marathon if it comes on today. Although I don't have cable, so that'd be very impressive if it just popped up on my TV. Although it might be on Netflix. I might check that out when I get home. I had periods of depression growing up, but I don't know if they were actually, you know, like the kind of depression I experienced as an adult, or if it was just moving, because every time I had these really severe periods of depression as a kid, it was usually after a huge change in my life, you know, like uprooting my life and being dropped off in a new country or a new whatever. And so that to me kind of made sense, because it's like, all right, well, I'm sad about missing my home, or I'm sad about being lonely because I don't have any friends here, or I'm sad about whatever. But my dad in 8th grade, after we moved to Maryland, I remember every time I got in his car, we would start talking, and by the end of it, by the time we got home, I would be sobbing. And my dad was like convinced there was something in his like in the fumes and the vents or something, because he's like, I don't know why. Every time you get in my car, you start talking about something and then you just start sobbing. And so it's kind of like an ongoing joke, because it didn't matter what we started talking about. At some point I would always lose it, and I would just be like so emotional about everything, and it would not always even be something I could articulate. It was just like, so today in school, Tommy, you know, was eating this like pudding snack, and then he was just eating it, you know, like, and then it made me think about the pudding snack, and then the pudding snack is just like, I didn't ask to be eaten, you know, and then my dad's just like, what? oh, yep. Like he was such a trooper because he didn't make fun of me, but he definitely was like, yep, that's really sad. But I'm sure the pudding snack's okay. I'm like, no, it's not. It's never gonna be okay. So who knows? Maybe that actually was, you know, the beginning of my long journey with depression, but it did not start because of a pudding snack. I think that was just a example of how when you are depressed, things that seem like not a big deal when you're kind of just in a normal state suddenly become a huge deal. It doesn't really necessarily matter as much what it is, because, you know, I think that's one of the hardest things when you have a mental illness, is that other people can't see it. You know, it's not like you're a leper. It's not like you have sores or boils, or it's not like you're missing a leg or something like that. I mean, you might be, and sorry about that. I'm just giving an example. I think that's the hardest part, is like not only dealing with like the symptoms of mental illness, you know, however that affects you, whether it's not being able to sleep at all and having horrible insomnia, which affected me for like a long time, or sleeping too much and always being tired and never having energy, you know, having panic attacks, having, you know, just random, the symptoms run the gamut, you know, just WebMD it, you can find out what the symptoms are. But dealing with all that, like, internally, and then also having to deal with the stigma, like the external pressures of, you know, either people judging you or people saying, well, are you sure it's this? You know, they don't actually always believe you, or if they do believe you, they're like, well, then just choose to be happy. They add insult to injury by kind of like, you already feel guilty enough, you know? You don't want to be here. I mean, maybe some people do. I highly doubt that anybody wants to be that miserable, that anybody wants to not be able to sleep, or that anybody wants to, the way it affects me is I can't sleep. And so, you know, you're already kind of exhausted and your emotions are much more like raw and fragile, but then I'm exhausted. So it's like I'm exhausted during the day, but at night I can't sleep. So it's like this ultimate curse where I can't get anything done. I'm so tired to even think, like making a decision, even if it's like going to Chipotle and ordering off the menu. I'm just like, my brain is like underwater. It's like you're trying to just functioning, like day-to-day functioning. Like, I know that's a common thing I hear a lot from people who are depressed, is like just, you know, getting dressed and getting out of the house is like a chore. And I know that sounds like an overstatement for somebody who's never been depressed, but if you have been, you kind of feel like you can probably relate to the fact that it feels like a Herculean effort to do what normal you could do on a normal day, you know, like. And there's this book that I didn't actually read it. My friend told me this quote, and I really like the quote. I'm going to read the book one day, though. It's on my to-do list. But it's called The Four Agreements, and one of the agreements is talking about how you should always do your best. Always do your best. But your best can change from day to day, from hour to hour, from minute to minute. So it's like, as long as you're doing your best in that moment, you know, like what you're capable of in that moment, then that's all you can ask of yourself. Don't ask yourself to be what their best is, or what your best is on a good day. You know, if you're having a particularly rough day, then do your best for that day or that hour. You know, just focus on the baby steps of getting through that day, being like, okay, I'm not going to look at the big picture because it's overwhelming right now. I'm not going to be like, oh, I've got to write this, and I've got to send this paper over to this person. I've got to do all a million things, like, because then you're just going to feel overwhelmed because you're not going to have the energy to do it. And then you're guilting yourself for not doing it, which makes you feel worse, ultimately. So it's not productive. Because I'm somebody who's a big multitasker. I love to always have a million projects going. So, you know, when I'm normal, like 100% functioning Amanda, I get a lot done. I'm on fire. When I'm depressed, I feel like I'm functioning on like 5% energy. You know, it's like your car's like sputtering and you're like trying to do the same amount that you would do here with this much fuel in your tank. And it's just not going to happen. You're trying to, I don't know cars very well, but you know, you're trying to get up to a certain RPM or something like that. And your car is like, my check engine light's on, I don't have gas, and I'm actually a carriage. I'm actually a horse-drawn carriage. That was a weird analogy. That analogy took a turn. But you know what I'm saying. You can't push yourself like that. If you try to measure up to what you did in the past, or you know, whatever, when you're not dealing with this illness, you're just not gonna be able to make it as much as you try, and then you're gonna feel like a failure, and that's not helpful. So always do your best, but do what your best is in that moment. So, you know, if you're only running on 5%, then if your best is going to the grocery store, running a couple errands, or maybe it's, I don't know, paying some bills that you've been pushing off, or calling your grandmother because it's her birthday, because I forgot it's actually my grandmother's birthday today. I do need to call her. That's why that popped in my head. So I'm going to do that later. Those are just examples, though. Don't be like, oh, well, she said it has to be this. But, you know, if for you, the most you can do is get out of bed and, like, make yourself a grilled cheese sandwich, then do that. And one thing I learned in therapy that it sounded so cheesy and I hated it. I was like, I'm not like a like feelings kind of person. But one thing that did help me was when you're depressed, you tend to have that negative self tape playing in your head. Well, it's not tape, it would be like a MP3 playing in your head. It's on shuffle, like your iPod in your head is saying you suck, it's saying, you know, why aren't you doing this? You're so lazy. Or, you know, like, it's just the negative voice of like, they can do it. All your friends on Facebook are able to do it. What's wrong with you? You know, it's your own voice. And it's funny how we'll let our inner voice tell us that we're ugly, that we're stupid, that we're fat, that we're worthless, that we'll always be alone, or whatever. We let our own inner voice tell us that. But if somebody else told us that, I don't know about you, but I'd punch them right in the nards. Like, I would never put up with somebody else talking to me like that, but for some reason I let my inner voice trample all over me. And so I kind of have to stop myself, and anytime I catch myself thinking something, I'm like, would I allow somebody else to say that to me and get away with it? No, then I'm not allowed to say it to myself, because, you know, if you should treat other people the way you want to be treated, then you also need to reverse that and treat yourself the way you treat other people. So if you're kind to other people and you don't take a certain amount of crap from other people, then be kind to yourself, or don't take a certain amount of crap from yourself, you know? Like, I feel like with depression, like, so for me, it kind of started hitting around early 20s, like about somewhere sophomore year, I think, of college or something. So when I started not being able to sleep at all, I didn't know why. Like, my sophomore year was a great year. Like, I had a lot of friends, you know, was really enjoying college life. I loved the dorm I was in. It was like the nerdy artist dorm, so we were all like, eh, you know, we're artsy fartsy and we're gonna do all this stuff together and talk about theater and pull pranks on each other. And, you know, I was doing theater. I was a theater major. I had a full scholarship, like, and I got a boyfriend at that time. It was like my first boyfriend. And so I'm like, everything seemed fantastic, and I felt like it was, but like my body wasn't agreeing with me. You know, like, suddenly I just wasn't able to sleep anymore, and I couldn't relate it to anything. And one of the hardest things about insomnia, like whether it's related to mental illness or not, is when people try to give you suggestions as if that's like, well, that'll fix it. And like, I get, you know, there are certain things that can help it, you know, like melatonin's supposed to help, or yoga, or exercising during the day, or eating right can help you sleep better, or chamomile or lavender, or whatever. You know, like, I ran the whole gamut, and for the past decade, I've had consistent trouble sleeping. And I still really haven't figured it out, which is unfortunate, you know, because there's not really any long-term medication you can be on for sleep. You can be on a long-term medication for depression or, you know, the underlying stuff, but even when I was on that, it didn't help my sleep. So I don't know if it's a, you know, related issue, or if it's just I have a bunch of issues, who knows. With the sleep thing, that I found was super important, which made it even more frustrating, because I knew how lack of sleep could cause an episode. Because lack of sleep, you know, it changes the chemistry of your brain, your body doesn't function as well. So sleep is super important, and in general it's just super important, because that's when your body replenishes itself and heals itself. But when you're, you know, if you're dealing with depression, or, you know, I'm bipolar, so sleep is very important both ways, because if I don't get a lot of sleep, I tend to be more depressed, but I also find that if I don't get a lot of sleep a couple nights in a row, I can go into a manic state, which is the opposite end of the spectrum, which is like you've got too much energy and you're like, it's fun at first because you're just like, well, I've got so much energy, I'm gonna write a book, and then I'm gonna burn it, you know, like who cares, I'll write another book, you know, like when you're manic though, it's like it's cool, it's like whoa, it's like a roller coaster where it's like, you know, things are really exciting, you're like okay, like, and then suddenly you drop. And that's like exhilarating, but imagine if that roller coaster were to fly off the tracks, then it's not so much fun. And that's kind of where the manic side can take you. Either way, sleep was very integrally tied into it, whether it caused it or sometimes it was just a symptom of it. You know, like if I noticed that my sleep dropped markedly, that usually to me was a sign that something was coming. It's like a storm was brewing. And so usually it meant like, okay, I need to be vigilant because this is a foreboding that either a manic episode's coming or a depressed episode's coming, and I need to be aware. I think it's helpful too, once you start to kind of notice what are your patterns, you know, what are there triggers in your environment that can cause an episode? Are there triggers or symptoms in your like physiology that you notice? Because for me, I found that like I would start to be able to predict it almost, where I'm like, I haven't eaten in like a day and I love food. If I'm not eating and if I'm not thinking about food, something's wrong. When I would find that I'm like, I haven't thought about food all day, or like I wasn't hungry, or if eating food made me nauseous, or if my sleep was suddenly just like plummeting and I was really like kind of confused and like blah, blah all the time, that kind of was like, okay, crap, it's about to happen. But because I was able to do that, I was able to kind of do what I could, you know, and try to, whatever that means, you know, whether it's getting medication or whatever. And that's still something that I kind of wrestle with because I haven't been on any for a while, but when I was on it, it helped. But then there's part of me that's still like, but I can do it. I can do it myself. Through healing, you know, like, I don't know, in California, everybody's like, I'll drink coconut water and kale and that cures anything. And most of the time I'm like, that's crap. I love coconut water and kale, but I don't think it's going to cure depression. At the same time, there's part of me that's like, but maybe it could. So that's still something I grapple with because, you know, there's part of me that hates the idea that I have to be on something the rest of my life. And especially with bipolar disorder, you know, the studies show that the links in bipolar disorder tend to be chemical in nature. So, you know, therapy helps with the managing of it, but there's still the chemical component that will always be there. And that's difficult for me to still kind of be like, but I don't want it to always be there. And it's like, well, you don't get a say in it always. So, you know, not everybody's depression. Like if you're dealing with depression, not everybody's depression is chemical. Sometimes it's circumstantial. You know, and it's linked to an event. Like it totally makes sense. If you have moved and you're missing home, or if you've lost a loved one, or you've gone through a breakup, or you've lost a job, or whatever, you know, like that's a normal reaction to pain. So, you know, that is, if it's circumstantial, you can, I would say therapy. Well, I say therapy in general. I think everybody needs therapy, whether they're depressed or not. Because it's like having a personal assistant for your brain. So basically you're able to take all the crap in there and like have somebody sort through it and be like, assistant, deal with this, and like they can help you kind of organize it. And I think that's, self-awareness is probably one of the biggest tools you can have in this life, is being able to just know yourself, the good and the bad, and be okay with it. You know, and knowing the good and the bad helps you change the things you want to change, but it also helps you recognize the things about you that are amazing and that make you different. And I also think therapy is very helpful because it might not be able to help you control the chemical aspects of it, but it can really help you kind of get your thoughts and hold them captive. Basically, like, when I talked about that negative self-tape or the self-MP3 earlier, that can spiral you further into a depression. So I kind of see it, my analogy is kind of like depression drops you in this desert and you're kind of like, or the jungle or wherever, somewhere you don't necessarily want to be, and it dropped you in this isolated location that you didn't want to be in, but you're here. So that, you know, that might be the circumstance or that might be the chemicals or whatever, but regardless of that, you are in this place But there's quicksand. And the quicksand to me is the cognitive aspect. It's the part that you allow to pull you deeper. So, you know, it's not your fault that you are in this location, whether it's the desert or the jungle or whatever, you know, the mental landscape. But you do have control over if you let the quicksand latch onto you, and if you if you sink deeper, because those are your thoughts. And they're really hard because in the beginning you can't even tell that you're thinking some of these things. You're like, what? I'm not thinking that. But that's why I say a therapist is so helpful. Or just talking to somebody and verbalizing it, or writing in a journal, or just something to get them out of your head so you can see the words in front of you, or you can see the concepts and be like, wait, I say that to myself? Wow, like, you know, like it's just, there's something that makes them real if you take them out of your head, if you speak them into existence. Suddenly you're like, oh, I do say that to myself. Well, that's not helpful. I tend to be one of the most judgmental people to myself, and I'm always comparing myself. I'm always like, well, she's prettier than me, or she's skinnier, or she's booked more work, or she's, you know, got a better voice than me, or, you know, all the boys love her, or, you know, whatever. Like, I'm always kind of like, well, how do I stack up to them? And so that's something I had to get rid of. Because there's always going to be somebody who is more fill in the blank than you. It doesn't mean they're better than you, it just means that particular area, yeah, their life is going to be different than yours. It doesn't mean it's better, it doesn't mean that they have more value as a person than you. But yes, there's always going to be girls who are physically stronger than me. Like, I'm really strong. I'm stronger than a lot of girls, but there's going to be girls who can bench press way more than I ever could. But I can't let that affect my value and my feelings about myself. So anyway, don't compare yourself to people, because that is not helpful, because you will find what you are looking for. If you want to be like, well, see, everybody else has more success than I do, then you're going to be looking for that, and you're going to see that. But what you don't see is the fact that, yeah, they might have success, or they might say they have success, because Facebook is one of those beautiful things where you can kind of cultivate this life that you want to present, and then you present it to the world, but you don't present the bad stuff. So when you're seeing all these great things in other people's life, just know that, like, that's probably the tip of the iceberg. You're probably seeing the 10% of their life that they want you to see, and you're not seeing the other 90%. That's the majority of their life. And there's probably a reason they don't want you to see it. So take everything you read or hear about other people with a grain of salt. But it doesn't mean, you know, like, congratulate them on the good stuff, but just be aware that their life is not perfect, because nobody's life is perfect. They might say it's perfect, but it's not. So stop trying to attain perfection in that. One of the other things I learned in therapy, this is kind of the cheesy thing that I'm going to recommend, that I thought was stupid at first, but it was helpful, was instead of beating yourself up and being like, oh, I should have done this more, or, oh, I didn't do anything with my day, or I slept in too late today, other people are at work and I'm just a piece of crap laying in bed, like, I kind of would beat myself up like that. Instead of judging myself for all the things I didn't do, or that I failed at doing, or that I didn't do to my standards or other standards, my therapist was like, anytime you do even the smallest thing, pat yourself on the back. I mean, you don't physically have to do it, because I feel like that's silly to be like, but if that works for you, fine. But just acknowledge that you did it and say, good for you, to yourself. Or you could say, good for me, whatever. But they've actually done studies that say when you talk to yourself, if you talk to yourself as you, as opposed to me, like, it sounds, I don't know, does something to your brain. Look it up, I read it somewhere, where talking about yourself in the second person is actually more effective than talking about yourself in the first person. Don't know why. I guess maybe it's like stepping outside of yourself or something. Back to what I said earlier about doing the best you can for that day. If you're like, all I did today was I, wrote an email. I responded to an email and I, paid off my credit, or I paid the credit card payment. Instead of saying that's all I did today, and then thinking, well, everybody else did so much more today. There's other people who are so much more productive, blah, 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 it's letting yourself spiral and go into that quicksand. Frame it as, I sent that email and I, paid that credit card payment. Good for me. Like, frame it as a positive and do it for the littlest things. If you're like, oh, I need to go to the grocery store and grab milk, and then you go and you do it, say, good for me. I did that. I grabbed milk. as opposed to, oh, that's all I did. So it's just framing little things in a different light, and slowly but surely, you'll find that if you can do that for the littlest things, then you're stopping the negative that negative tape that's playing in your head, and it kind of allows you to slowly crawl out of the quicksand. And, I mean, slowly. It's not going to be like tomorrow. You're not going to be like, good for me, and then suddenly be like, I'm on top of the world. This is great. I'm from a 1920s movie for some reason. You'll slowly start to kind of like, you're pausing the negative tape, and you're kind of building yourself up little by little and giving yourself grace and kindness, and eventually it'll be, oh, I did something, that you do something slightly bigger than you did before. And it adds up, and then eventually you'll start to find like, okay, I did what I wanted to do today, or I did something close to it. But it'll start with just the little things of acknowledging the value of what you did, that you did anything. If you're like, hey, I woke up today, and you might not even get out of bed, but you might have been like, I woke up today and I watched TV. Good for me. Because honestly, like having been in a suicidal place before, and I made an attempt a couple years ago, which you can read all about if you find my Tumblr page. Getting out of bed or just waking up is a big accomplishment if you're in such a depressed state that if suicide seems like an option to you, then waking up is a big deal, and it is something to pat yourself on the back for. Being like, good for me. I didn't make a decision that ended my life. I'm still here. Good for me. Like that's really important. And as somebody who is still here, I can tell you, if you're considering, ending everything, I can't make you stay. I can't tell you that, all the trite things of the sun will come out tomorrow, or, you have the gift of life, be happy. Because it's like, okay. Because when you're in a depressed state, yes, like, those are facts that when you're in a normal state, yes, you can acknowledge, oh, the sun's still shining, that's at least one thing I can count on, or, okay, I'm still alive, that's a good thing. But when you're depressed, when people would remind me, like, hey, you're still alive, that actually made me really mad because I didn't want to be. So, I get that when you're in that place, nothing seems hopeful, nothing seems like it will ever be better. But I just want to put that out there that when I tried to kill myself, I don't think I actually fully wanted to die. I didn't want to live. I didn't want to keep going. I kind of just wanted to like poof and like disappear. But there was part of me that was like hoping that there was something out there that would be more than what I had. And yeah, sorry, it's like bringing me back to that place. And this is probably something that some of you probably won't relate to, but for me, like, I'm a Christian and my faith was really important to me. So on top of my depression making me feel like crap, I felt like an extra layer of like guilt, because I thought that if you had God, everything was supposed to be great and you were never going to suffer and life would be perfect. So if you were suffering, it's your own fault. And that's actually not anywhere in the Bible. So read it before you throw it at people. I'm talking to other Christians, not you guys. I don't know if you throw things at people. But, like, that was something I felt really guilty about, was the fact that it's like, I feel like I have this thing that I'm supposed to put my faith in, but it still didn't feel like enough to me, and I just wanted to, like, not be here, and I kind of hoped that, like, if I were to just stop existing, maybe I could go to heaven where things are supposed to be better. Who knows? Anyway, sorry that was really, like, personal, and if you're not religious, I'm not trying to, like, convert you, I'm just sharing my stuff, but I know that before I tried to attempt, I wrote a note to my family, and that was really hard, and even to God, and I was like, you know what? If you want me to still be here tomorrow, then you need to intervene, because I'm going to do this, but I really, if you have something better for me, you need to show it, because I am at the end of my rope, and I don't know I don't see anything beyond today. So anyway, in the morning, I took a lot of stuff. Like, I thought I researched it well, and I did, and it's funny how lesser things have killed people, but I took a lot of stuff. And in the morning, I woke up, my head hurt a little bit, but I was still there, and I was kind of annoyed, but I was kind of like, all right, I'm gonna trust that there is something beyond that, because I'm still freaking here, and there's people who, you know, have died from like walking down the street and slipping on a banana peel and falling in just such a way that they die, you know, and here I am not wanting to live and trying actively to kill myself and drinking stuff you should not be putting in the human body that usually should have taken you out, and I'm still freaking here. So I'm like, all right, show me what you got. And then within a couple months, I got cast on my favorite childhood show, playing my favorite character. For those of you that don't know, I'm in Sailor Moon, and I voice Sailor Jupiter. And growing up, I would be running around in the backyard playing playing as Sailor Jupiter with my friends, like Alicia and Luce, and Alicia was Sailor Moon, and Luce was Sailor Mars, and we would run around, and we would like reenact all the episodes, and we were obsessed with this for years, and I identified so much with Jupiter because she was my like embodiment of who I hope to be. She embodied the struggle that I felt growing up, because I felt like I like girl things, but I like boy things. Like I like Disney princess stuff, but I also really liked Power Rangers, or like I like playing with like toy swords and all that, but I also like playing with Barbie. I play soccer and hockey, but I also really like I want to be able to dance. I can't dance, but I thought it'd be cool to be able to be like a ballerina or a figure skater, you know? So, and I was tough and tomboyish, but I also wanted I wanted boys to like me, and you know, like it was a very similar thing where she had that dichotomy, so I identified with her so much, and she was my hero. And who would have thought of the odds of all the millions of girls and boys who watched Sailor Moon growing up, that me, in this like in my backyard in Florida, would one day end up being on the show playing that character. Like, the odds are insane. You know, and of all the people that auditioned for the show, and the fact that the show had to go through all these different stages of casting to get to, like, they kept doing a bunch of waves of casting, and they ended up going to the creator of the show, and the creator of the show in Japan, Naoko Takeuchi, I hope I didn't butcher it, I probably did, whatever, but she handpicked the voices. So it's like, I'm supposed to be here. That was the weirdest thing, is like, oh, if I had killed myself, this would have never happened, and I would have never in a million years thought that this would be what was around the corner. And this is not the only thing that's around the corner. I'm just saying this is just one thing. But it's kind of been like, oh, I see. Things can get better. Just way more than I ever thought they could be. Because, like, what are the odds that they're going to redub a show that I watched growing up, like 20 years ago? They're going to be like, you know what? This is the year we're going to remaster and redub an unedited version of this 90s show. And we're going to use the same, like, it's the same footage I watched growing up, essentially. And it's like, we're going to do it in the same city where Amanda lives, and we're going to do it, and I just happen to be in the right place at the right time. It's like, it's a lot of crazy coincidences, if you believe in coincidences. I don't. But anyway, that's beside the point. It's just one of those things where I'm so glad that I am still here. I would have never known. And I know that's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, if you kill yourself, you'll never know, so you can't regret anything. But I'm just telling you, do you really want to miss out on that possibility? The chance that something amazing could happen to you around the corner. And like I said, this is just the beginning of stuff for me. This is not the reason I'm alive. It's just one of the many, like, awesome things that life can have in store for you if you just hold on. And if you push through. And I'm so sorry that I've been rambling this whole time. I'm kind of just stream of consciousing. I'm trying to make a verb out of it. Stream of whatever. You know what I'm saying. I'm talking out my butt, basically. But I hope some of this was helpful. If not, I don't know, Martin will probably edit it down and take out all my rambles. So, I must have been in this chair. But yeah, be good to yourself. Give yourself grace and patience and kindness, and don't beat yourself up. You know, like I said, it's not necessarily your fault. You've, by whatever means, whether it's circumstances or chemicals, you've wound up in this desert or this whatever, tropical, because I'm trying to think, like quicksand I don't think is in the desert, I think that's in the jungle, so let's say the jungle. You wound up in this wild, ferocious jungle, not through any fault of your own, it's just, you're here, and that sucks. But you can choose to avoid the quicksand, which is your own crappy thoughts about yourself, and the idea that you're alone, the idea that it will never get better, the idea that you have nothing to live for and that nobody will ever love you, or that nobody does love you. And I don't know, maybe you have a lot of really crappy people in your life, but I can guarantee you there's at least one, you might not even know, but there's at least one person that really cares about you, who would be really, really hurt if you weren't here anymore. And one day that number's going to grow, and so right now, yes, you might feel alone, but you're not always going to be alone. I can't tell you when things are going to get better, or how, or what's going to happen, but I can tell you that it will get better. But you need to stick around in order to see that. You can't live a future that you're not present for. So, yeah. Be kind to yourself, love yourself, be patient. Screw what other people say. If people are trying to tear you down and make you feel guilty for stuff, you don't need that. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for you. I'm going to spin in this chair one more time. Like, I don't know how to end a video. I'm like, see.